let's begin. I'm Anthony Forgione. I'm the Director of Business Development for the HIA-LI, and I want to welcome you all this morning to this wonderful panel on transformational leadership. And as you will see, and as Terry will introduce, the panel is really loaded with top senior executives have been through so much in each one of their industries. So welcome, you're going to get a lot out of this program. I want to thank our sponsors today. Sponsors are so important to the HIA-LI. Sponsors are able to help us elevate our programs and bring more of these programs to you. I want to thank Citry Cooperman. I want to thank Long Island Cares, and I want to thank Dime for all their support, not only in this program, but for their annual support they give us. I also want to thank our board of directors, some being on this call today. Our board, we can't be the same organization without this board. This board really steps up every day, and they stepped up even more while we were going through COVID. So I really want to thank each and every one of them of their support and their backing and their guidance of the HIA-LI. Upcoming events, we're featuring the CEO Forum featuring Craig Fine, who is the managing partner of Mazars on June 3rd. And we have our networking event on June 10th. This is our scholarship program. What a wonderful panel of young professionals. We're looking forward to that. This is also the program where we do award scholarships out to students who are going to college on Long Island. On the same day, we are also having our virtual job fair. The virtual job fair runs from 9 to 5. If your organization is looking to hire people and you have not signed up, I would recommend you do sign up. I will tell you right now, I think last count, we had about 70 companies signed up, including some major big ones, including Newsday. So that's on June 10th. And last but not least, we have on June 22nd, the future of Long Island MacArthur Airport and tourism on Long Island, specifically into COVID, coming out of COVID. We have a wonderful panel, as you see, Kristen Jardigan, Angie Carpenter, the commissioner of the Islip Airport. So it's going to be really a lovely panel. I would urge you all to either sponsor or at least attend, because this is going to be really forefront on where we are with tourism, where we are with travel, where we are with the whole entertainment industry on Long Island. And we also are accepting right now nominations for our Business Achievement Awards, which is on September 21st. As you know, these award ceremonies is like the Oscars of small business. So we have more time. We have until July, but if we are asking you to submit some applications, especially the companies that have pivoted through COVID. There's some really remarkable stories out there on companies that have either pivoted to a different product or just have really done something different for their employees and for their customers. So I urge you to apply. Okay, so let's begin this wonderful program. It is my honor and privilege to introduce the president and CEO of the HIA-LI, Terry Elisi Misselli.
Well, thanks so much, and good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Certainly, you know, it was 15 months ago where we saw the first case of COVID, at least on Long Island. And you know, when we think about it, all of us just swung into action. Obviously, you know, the HIA-LI was there alongside you, really disseminating a lot of critical information as it related to not only COVID, but the opening and reopening of businesses. We're very proud of that. We are extremely proud of all of you, our members, who, as you heard Anthony say, many of you have repurposed your plants, to provide personal protection equipment, to help out with stimulus funds, to help out with any help you really needed just in terms of reopening and getting through this hole. And as we look at that, if you think about the last 15 months, what a great example of, for all of us, our ability to be transformational leaders, right? You think about how we had to really affect change, how we had to communicate potentially differently than we've ever had before, how we've had to adapt and help our employees adapt, and how we had to be far more empathetic in our support as we went through all of this. So we're very excited to have these leaders with us. They've done some remarkable things, not only through COVID, but throughout their careers, and equally as honored to have Rich Human, who's the president and CEO of H2M Architects and Engineers. He's also the HIA-LI board chair. I've had the opportunity to work with him more closely the last several months, and one of the things I do have to say is he really exemplifies a transformational leader, and he's really helping us affect change and also really communicate our next norm at the HIA-LI. So before I turn it over to Rich, I'm going to just remind everybody, if you have any questions, to put them in the bottom right-hand side of your corner in that Q&A box, and I'm going to turn it over to Rich Human.
Great, thanks, Terry. And welcome to everybody. Glad you could spend some time with us this morning. Terry, great job on putting together this panel of leaders. And I love the fact that we've got leaders from various organizations, because in the end, we all had similar challenges. We had some different challenges during the pandemic. It's interesting when you consider what some of the issues were for all of us to have to deal with it as leaders, and what we can learn from each other. Some of the issues that one organization might have had, maybe another organization hadn't had the same issue, or maybe is dealing with something similar, but can learn from that. And I think this morning, my focus is going to be to learn from these four leaders about the things that they had to do in their organization, and the things that they've learned, and how they are applying some of the lessons learned in order to make the organization stronger moving forward. So I'm going to give each of you an opportunity in a minute to introduce yourselves and your organization. We've got David Kilnick, who is president and CEO, LGBT Network. Welcome. I'm going to call you David K, because we also have David Friedfeld. Did I pronounce that right, David F? Yes. Okay. So we have David F, who's president of Clear Vision Optical, Paul Pachter, who is CEO of Long Island Cares, and Kevin O'Connor, CEO of Dime Community Bank. So David K, if you could just do a quick intro of yourself and your organization for the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Rich. It's good to be back together again. It'll be great to be in person, hopefully soon enough together. And thank you to Terry and Anthony and HIA Long Island for never missing a beat, and always making sure that we always stayed connected and still felt part of getting through a very difficult time. So, as Rich said, my name is David Kilnick. I'm president and CEO of the LGBT Network. I'm also founder of the organization. I founded it 28 years ago when I was a student at Stony Brook University, studying for my master's in social work, and conducted a project out across Long Island schools to introduce a curricula to talk about what it was like to grow up LGBT. And at that time, back in 1993, got into 7 schools, and it sounds like it was a secretive mission and on the down low, and it pretty much was. And there would always be a couple of kids that would shuffle their papers, hit them on the floor, and wait for everyone else to leave to come up and ask the gay speaker a question. That question was the same, whether it was in Nassau County or all the way out east or in between. And the question was simply, is there a place I can go just to meet other people like myself? And there wasn't back in 1993. And that's when I said, okay, we need to start something, and created an organization called Legally, or Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth. Fast forward 28 years later, we're now a network of several different 501c3 nonprofits. We also have a 501c4, which works towards more of the advocacy and political issues. But we're in pretty much every school on Long Island, 120 school districts. We expanded into the borough of Queens 5 or 6 years ago, and that we have a community center in Astoria. Our main office and headquarters is right in Hauppauge. We also have a center out in Sag Harbor, and in the next month, we are opening up the first LGBT-friendly affordable senior housing and a new community center in downtown Bayshore. We provide so many different services to the entire community, not just LGBT, allied folks, parents, businesses, you name it. We have a huge workplace initiative which grew in this pandemic, actually. And we're glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Great, David, and thanks for your voice. Thanks for your commitment to Long Island. You know, you're a leader that I know many people look to, and we appreciate it. David F., introduce yourself and your company.
So first of all, David K., you're a tough act to follow. All we do is sell eyewear. I'm the president of a family-owned and operated business, which started in 1949. I can't say that it started on Long Island, but we did move here pretty quickly. We have about 150 or so people working with us, 80 on Long Island and 70 around the country. We design, manufacture, and distribute eyewear, sunglasses, and reading glasses. And as we talk more about things this morning, I can talk to you about how we've transformed our business, because the last year was a fast year. A lot of things got done. I'm looking forward to being on the panel. And I just want to do a shout out for all business guys, because business guys take a lot of hits. We know that. Sometimes it's not popular to be business owners or business leaders, but my view is that business runs the country. So thank you guys for doing what you do.
Thanks, David. And Paul. Good morning, Paul.
Morning, Rich. And good morning to the rest of the panelists and to everyone who's watching this right now on your screens. I'm Paul Pachter. I'm the CEO of Long Island Cares and the Harry Chapin Regional Food Bank. We were founded 41 years ago by the late singer, Grammy Award-winning songwriter and social activist Harry Chapin. And for the past 41 years rather, Long Island Cares has been focusing in on the needs of our neighbors who are food insecure or hungry. And certainly in the past 13 years, we have been transforming ourselves, which is why I'm so honored to be part of this panel, not only to discuss what we've been able to do transformationally, but what we're about to announce in the coming weeks to continue that journey into becoming a more transformational organization. So I look forward to the dialogue and all the presentations. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Welcome. And co-board member, Kevin O'Connor. Good morning, Kevin.
Thank you, Rich. And Terry, she could do this whole presentation herself as a transformational leader. The things that she did hosting this event, certainly pivoting the whole organization. She was the voice of the park and really created a dynamic for us all. But I'm certainly excited to participate here. I feel like this is an opportunity to introduce the new dime to lots of people. In addition to trying to deal with the pandemic and all of the things related to this, we put together two very strong community banks to create something that didn't exist on Long Island. We began this journey in November. Bridgehampton, or B&B, had been 110 years old. Dime Community was over 160 years old. Had really become a community bank, and together we have something that doesn't exist on Long Island: $13 billion in assets, $1 billion in capital, 800 bankers on the ground ready to help as we emerge out of this pandemic. In addition to doing all of that, we did do about $2 billion of PPP loans, recognizing that this was an opportunity for all of us to sort of help out and get to the other side. And it feels like we're there for the first time, Rich. We've talked about it a number of times. Every day seems more exciting. So I look forward to the conversation. There's been so much, and I think you said it before, that this year went very fast. There's lots more work to be done. And again, I think as being part of the new dime, working with my colleagues, Stu LeBeau, I'm excited for us and for the Long Island community to really reemerge and continue in 2021 in a new and exciting way.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Welcome, everybody. So, Kevin, I'm going to stick with you. You went through an M&A process during the pandemic, which I'm sure was just a brilliant headed challenge. So, talk a bit about, how you led, B&B through the pandemic, what some of the more significant challenges may have been. And if you want to speak to the M&A process and anything that added, because now that you're the CEO of this combined, banking entity, I'm sure there's much to be learned from some of the challenges and things you've overcome during the pandemic.
Well, I go all the way back to November of 19 when I sat down with Ken Mahan, who had been the CEO of Dime. And we said that both our organizations were on a path where we were sort of running into each other, and thought the best place for us to sort of move forward was maybe think about getting together. And that process ran all the way through March of last year. And that's when all of a sudden we thought we had a deal to be done. And we were both sending our employees home and felt like maybe this wasn't the right time. And so we sort of backed away, but we continued that conversation because we thought it made sense. And it was that as we pivoted to send people home. And again, since we run a branch network, half our employees go home and half have to stay in the branches. We announced it in July because that's when we felt we at least had some handle of what was going to happen. Then we began a process that culminated with the merger on February 1st of trying to figure out how we were going to merge systems, cultures, and everything with a remote workforce. And so, we made use, and I'm sure the word communication will be brought up a lot here over the next 45 minutes as we discuss, because that's what this was about. It was communication up and down the organization. In a couple of these panels I've talked about, we had weekly town hall meetings where we got to talk to all of our employees. And for the up through February 1st, it was with our 500 employees, and then it was with the 800 employees of the new organization. And we have taken that to merging cultures, creating a new identity, culminating in the branding that we've done, and really converted systems. So it was many of the things we're going to hear. It was patience. It was sort of self-awareness. It was understanding different people think differently. But in the end, we recognized that sort of the success that both organizations had with PPP was something about a focus on the customer. So as long as we kept that and understanding that we were part of the solution and everybody had that as a message, we were successful. So I sit here today, humbled by what we accomplished, knowing that I'm not the same person and many in our organization aren't. I think we're all different than when we started this. I think, and so that is, I think, sort of the message I could give you.
That's great. Thanks, Kevin. David Kay. So as you have led your organization over the last 15 months or so. Talk to the group about some of the challenges and the things that you did as a leader to help guide your organization through the pandemic.
Sure. So thanks, Rich, and Kevin. I appreciated everything that you just shared, because it hasn't been easy. As a not-for-profit organization, we rely on our different funding sources, right? And our funding sources, whether they're government, which always is painfully slow to pay you, became even slower, if that's possible. And it was possible, unfortunately. And then we weren't able to do our fundraisers. And, Long Island is a very philanthropic community. And so it made it difficult from a financial perspective, but the more important thing is that we're a community-based organization, right? Serving with our community centers, being physically out there, meeting people, and creating community. And for so many LGBT folks, the in-person part of it is so important, because that's where folks feel that they're part of a larger community when they may feel ostracized in their own homes or in their schools or in their workplaces. So, that part was missing, and we had to quickly adapt to how we were going to continue providing our services and create community in a different way. And we did. We were very successful, thankfully, in investing in certain platforms beyond Zoom to be able to provide services and help people feel as connected as they could be. and especially for those young kids that were at homes that had parents that don't support them, they were stuck with them, right? They had no choice. They had to stay home, they had to quarantine. And so, we knew right away that we had to adapt to make sure that these kids are going to feel some sort of sense of safety, and that there's hope, and that there was someone for them. So we created a whole, over the course of the year, we had about 24 to 24 to about 30 programs each week held virtually. We created a different model for it. We served more people than we ever served before in person. We realized that access was unparalleled through virtual program. It didn't replace the in-person part of it, but we realized going forward that we are going to keep a big element of virtual in addition to in-person. And I think our staff needed additional support as well. And I think, Paul talked to this too, because Paul did an amazing job, and Long Island Cares did an amazing job in addressing the food insecurity issues that were out there. And what we saw over the past year was that, people needed more help and support, not less. And so our challenge was, how are we going to adapt to create that additional support with the reduced resources and with the reduced capacity that we had to have as well. And what really helped with that, and I think, Kevin started to talk about this, and I know we're going to hear it from other folks, is that we listened to our staff in a different way than we ever had before. And they were able to have voices that they didn't have before, in a way. Because we were able to have more meetings, more team meetings together, because we weren't running off to the Crest Hollow Country Club every day for breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I do not miss that. But we were able to give more time to our staff, and as Terry said, be more empathetic and realize that what everyone else is going through during the pandemic, and even beyond that, it made us think a little bit differently. Our staff is going through as well.
So I'm sure as leader of the organization, the burden always sits on your shoulders, and the stress of a lack of resources, and frankly not being in control at all of your resources, but having to react because you need to survive. How did that weigh on you? How did you handle the stress of really not knowing, what the impact of a lack of resources was going to be on your organization?
Sure. It was, from the get-go, we said this, obviously there was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know what was going to happen. So, we were planning not only for March 2020, but we were planning for being around in December 2020. And what kind of measures did we have to take as a not-for-profit organization to make sure that we were there? So we did have furloughs, in the beginning, because we knew that, as I said before, government is painfully slow to pay you, and that we knew we weren't going to be able to have any fundraisers. So our planning was, how are we going to be here in December 2020 and beyond to make sure that people are getting the help and support? And that was incredibly stressful because, I think we can all, that our employees are human beings. They have their own lives, they have families, they have other people to take care of, and you do care about them. And so how I dealt with it personally was that being focused, from a business perspective, I guess, but also from a personal perspective, I started to take better care of myself as well. I actually had the COVID -19, and so got out there and for the first time since I was 8 years old, rode a bike, and I think taking care of my own physical and mental health helped me to better take care of and support our staff members as well.
That's good stuff. So I'm going to jump over to Paul, and I will say that Paul and Long Island Cares, I thought you guys did a really great job of staying very visible and continuing to drive your value in the community. Food insecurity was, I think, top of mind for lots of people. You would look on the news and you would see, lines and lines of cars at central locations, just so people that never had to worry about food insecurity all of a sudden did. And I wanted to thank you and Long Island Cares for the things that you have done, not only in the past during the pandemic, but moving forward. So talk to the group a bit about some of the challenges you saw and how you led your organization, over the last 14 months. You're muted, Paul.
Okay.
Good.
The first challenge that I had in overseeing the organization was really to focus in on the safety of our staff. Unlike other major crises such as the prolonged government shutdown or Hurricane Sandy, where that's really impacting a specific group of people, maybe a limited geographic area, the COVID-19 pandemic was affecting all of us, not only the people who work at Long Island Cares, but the people who we serve, the agencies that we support. So the primary challenge for me was to make sure that our staff were healthy, that they would stay healthy, and that we address their needs. So like many of the nonprofits and even the for-profits, PPE became a way of life at Long Island Cares, as did plexiglass barriers. We had a system in place where people would be tested for COVID every 6 weeks. And now we have a system in place where 72% of our staff have been fully vaccinated for the virus. So paramount for us was really focusing in on the safety of our staff, and then focusing in on the strength of the emergency food network here on Long Island, which meant being in touch with 374 local community member agencies, and also being in touch with our network of volunteers who help us do our work. And then the third pillar was the supply chain. We heard very early on that the ability for food to be transported across the country was going to be delayed, probably by 12 to 15 weeks. And in a normal year, when there's no pandemic, the wait time is usually 3 to 4 weeks. But we knew very quickly that we were going to have to increase our purchasing of food, and we did by about 72%. And we knew that we would be distributing more food because there were going to be additional resources established. And we did distribute at the end of the first year an additional 70% in emergency food support. The other thing that was important for us was accessibility. I applaud all of my colleagues across the country that oversaw those amazing drive-through food distribution sites. That is not Long Island Care's model. Our model is really focusing in on people, getting to meet people, finding out why, what brings them to us. So in order to do that, we immediately mobilized our 5 community-based satellite locations where we operate in and provide our own pantries, those being the communities of Freeport, Lindenhurst, Huntington Station, and Hampton Bays. In fact, we opened up our Hampton Bays satellite on March 1st and went into COVID mode on March 13th. So we had the resources available to our East End agencies that work closely with us. But in also bringing in 72% more food, we also knew that we'd have to be making some changes to our infrastructure. That included accessing additional warehouse space, renting portable freezers and coolers that were on our property here in Hauppauge and Hampton Bays, hiring 12 additional temporary staff members. So our workforce went up from 53 to 64. And also knowing that we were going to be serving more people. And our model in which people come to us or we go to your home to deliver food resulted in our ability to establish an unduplicated number of how many people on Long Island were struggling with food insecurity for the very first time due to COVID, and that number is 223,000. It also allowed us to get involved in terms of policymaking and where some of the additional federal funds and state funds were going to go. We were at the forefront of the Nourish New York initiative that's still going on. So for us, it was the safety of our staff and volunteers. It was the strength of our infrastructure, not only to meet the immediate 3 or 4 months, but as David said earlier on, David, Kate, to all of you, we knew we were going to be in this for at least an entire year. And then who knows what the residual effects of COVID are going to be. I mean, right now we're seeing it with the high cost at the supermarkets for food and the increased cost of gasoline for people to put in their cars. So that's going to provide a challenge to us. But once we got our staff situated and safe, once we knew our infrastructure could handle the additional food, we started purchasing and distributing food out of 25 different locations in both counties. So that's where we're at.
So there's a bunch of stuff in there that I heard. Now, I think your ability to be nimble and to understand your mission, be able to now shift in order to get food to the people that needed it. From your perspective, now you're the leader of the organization. What was it like, in the war room of Long Island Cares? How did you go about, I'm going to kind of consider almost, in a very quick reactive way, kind of shift how you went about, your business normally to get to the point where you could manage your resources in a way that was now going to allow you to make sure that food got to people in a new way?
Well, I think for us, the ability to transform Long Island Care so quickly is based upon the fact that we've had experience in dealing with national crises, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of Hurricane Sandy. So we knew what was going to be involved. We were very grateful to the elected officials that reached out to us. Many of them reached out in order to offer help. And what could we do to make sure that people in need of food had the food? We were able to push forward our satellite model, which just makes sense for us. And all of the elected officials that worked with us were aware that creating these pop-up locations that people could go to any day of the week, 7 days a week, was going to be of value, as well as our ability to deliver food through our mobile pantry, our senior outreach program, our homeless outreach program. So having that and then realizing that all of the attention being given to food banks in the early months of COVID, including Long Island Cares and things that we did on our own, because you mentioned our visibility, that resulted in an enormous amount of money being raised from all over the country. But what we did realize during COVID was that those donors, I think right now it's about 36,000 donors that support this organization on an annual basis. We're doing even more to support us than they had done in the past. So if somebody wrote a check for $50 at Christmas when COVID hit, they wrote another check in April. And then when they heard about the children in the summer, they wrote another check for the children. So we were honored and excited and elated that we had the resources to do what we wanted to do next. And that we roll out in the next month.
Great. Thanks, Paul. David F., Clear Vision. So, you're a different type of organization. So how did you go about, managing your way, through the challenges of the pandemic and with your staff, still creating a product or shifting the way that you needed to? So talk to the group about the things that you did and what some of the nice outcomes were of those.
Okay. I think you're right, Rich. We are a little bit of a different kind of group than some of the others on the call, but I'll also give a little bit of a different answer. On March 13th, effectively, everyone got information that the world was going to change. We all remember that date. It's our September 11th in a different way. By the next week on Thursday, we were effectively closed at Clear Vision. I had to send people home. We had to communicate throughout the country with our sales organization. We had to communicate with our customers, which are about 10,000 across the country, what was going to happen. And the truth was, we didn't know what was going to happen. So we were in a very, very different place, very vulnerable. The CDC quickly closed down optometry, all but for emergency situations. So my business was effectively closed without revenue for about 3 months, not until early June, for most part of the country. And that was our biggest concern at the time. Okay, are we going to be in business? That was our biggest concern. Are we going to be in business? There was a lot of government discussion at the time. There was a lot of local discussion. There was a lot of discussion with our banks, with the accounting firms, everybody. Are we going to be in business if there's no revenue that comes into the organization? We understood pretty quickly that based on the history of the company, we'd be able to last until the fall pretty much without revenue. What I learned later is that most businesses can't even do that. Most businesses can't go more than a month or two without the revenue that they depend upon monthly. So that was the first thing that we faced. Second thing that actually happened at our company, after about 3 weeks, I recognized that the management style that I have and the way I looked at the business was absolutely not going to work. And I knew this, but nobody else knew it. That means it was something that I wasn't necessarily sharing with everybody, but I realized this is not going to work. And whereas the strengths of our organization worked for us in the past, some of those same strengths were not going to work. I had a long talk with another CEO. It was actually 3 weeks after that, Friday the 13th. It was 3 weeks later. And he said to me something close to this: David, you have a big responsibility. And if you're not going to be able to make the decisions that are ahead of you, your company's going to fail. Now, again, that was at a time when it looked pretty dark. As it turned out later, it wasn't as dark as I'm just painting, but it was fairly dark. And my wife at the time had COVID. So we were early in the world of COVID. My brother-in-law had COVID at that time. There were people inside our company that had COVID. We ultimately had 1 out of every 6 persons in the company had COVID right then and there in that, March, April, May period. So there were a lot of things going on. What changed? And I think that's the question. Many people that wanted to step up in the organization in prior years, where maybe I didn't allow them to have the responsibilities that they ultimately have today, many of those people stepped up in a big way. And the support that I received from our staff was overwhelming. And for a person like myself, who's fairly self-reliant, self-sufficient, and this kind of strong leader that doesn't need any help, this was a really vulnerable moment for me. And once I realized that I couldn't do everything myself, I was going to have to rely on others to help me. Once that happened, the company actually went in a completely different direction. So, while the topic today is transformational leadership, I have to admit that it wasn't something that I planned. If we go back to the 2008 period, there was a lot more planning that happened on a senior level, and the company was actually in a different place. The company was probably more prepared in 2008 than we were in 2021 or 2020. But the thing that really changed in the company was the people in the organization. And once I realized within the first 3 or 4 months that was going to be the way we did our business, I did like David Kay. I said to myself, okay, if we make it through the fall, because we weren't open for March, April, May, and into June. If we make it to the fall, I have to have a different company by January 2021. And that's what we focused on. So most of us don't get an opportunity to stop our business and retool. it's almost impossible. And the blessing, if there was, or the silver lining in COVID-19, was that we actually had a chance to stop our business. There was money going out each week, but there wasn't a lot of activity. And we did a great job inside the organization in multiple meetings. I think, Kevin said it started with communication. We had a tremendous communication plan. It was very frequent. We had been using Zoom for years before, so our company was very well accustomed to the Zoom world. But where we ended up was, some of us would say it's impossible to paint a moving bus. We didn't have a moving bus. We actually got to repaint our bus that was stopped. We focused on process improvement. We focused on what it was going to look like after. We focused intensely on the profitability of every transaction, which we had never done before. And, I think the big learning lesson for me, in business 72 years now, is that some things that we did at the company were accidental. Some things were worked well when we weren't under pressure. But when we really came under pressure, had we not made the changes, I'm pretty sure, and had the business conditions continued, I'm pretty sure that it would have not worked out, or I would have not been the leader that transformed. But I want to be clear, the transformation was not something purposeful on my side. It was more about, I have to figure things out. And it was, in that sense, painting a moving bus at that time. And it was, we look back a year later, the company is in an amazing place. It has a tremendous opportunity. It is more profitable. There is things we pivoted. We went into the PPE business very quickly. We had a website up. It became additional revenue that was highly profitable for us because the background of our organization was in distribution. So once we were able to distribute something that we were closed down from our regular business, but once we were able to distribute something out of Hop, we were able to get revenue. And that was really important for us as well. We've then decided to stay in that business. Even though we won't be a big player like some of the others, it's actually a very good business for us. And it taught us also the direct-to-consumer business, which we're also launching 2 other websites within the next 12 weeks. Because one of the challenges that we have as an eyewear company, we don't want to compete with our customers, but we learned how to do things in a way that would enhance our customers. So direct-to-consumer became very interesting. And in addition, we also faced importing. Most eyewear in the United States is imported, about 95%. So it's very hard if you have tariffs on your eyewear, which we do, tariffs on a point of purchase, which we did, and then the supply chain is completely disrupted. What will you do? We actually started to manufacture in the United States. And while those 2 facilities, one's a 3D printing and one's a traditional manufacturing, while those facilities are not up right now, we were pushed very hard to change, and those facilities will be online in 2021. So it was an odd time, but the requirements of what was going on, or the conditions of what was going on, made us change very rapidly. And I only have my staff to thank for what they did, all of them, senior leaders and entry-level individuals. Really was a good year, and we're unfortunate. We did have several deaths in family members, not in the Clear Vision immediate family, but family members. That was very difficult, and some people got very, very sick. But right now, everything's looking good and moving forward.
That's good to hear, David. And I think, a number of takeaways from what you said is, as leaders during crisis, I think that our recognition and our willingness to transform is vital, because, if you're not successful in adapting whatever approach you need to, the likelihood is the crisis is going to overcome you. And, you just described you're in a situation where you didn't know if your company was going to be in business. So without a commitment to change and a commitment to transforming, who knows where you would be. And I love the fact that, and I think this is unfortunately, a typical trait of leaders, is that we could do it ourselves. we can, if we work hard enough and we commit enough, we don't need to rely on other people. We can get it all done and again, bear the burden, but, you recognize the need to have to rely on your team, and your team came through for you. To me, everything you said is I think a great lesson learned about, how we can all, benefit from the people that work with us to support us when we're in a crisis. So I just think that was great.
Yeah, Rich, if I could add just one thing, one of the things that happened along the way, once I realized that I had a much better business team, the system, in other words, I wouldn't say the team was always the same. Once I realized we had a better system, I said to myself, there's no way I'm ever going back to the other way. There's just no way I'm ever going back. So one of the things we committed to, we are a remote organization first. So our company is now remote, and we do not intend to become a physical company ever again for as long as we can see in the future, because we actually like working remote. Now, that means there are certain individuals that are not remote because we have a distribution business, but we made changes to the way that they work as well, which means effectively shorter shifts for the same pay. So that means they actually have more time and they're not hurt financially, which they like. So the physical space way we work is different, and the remote space way we work is different, and the management system is different. And for the most part, there's a couple of challenges, but everyone likes it. And from a leadership position, I really get to be a different guy, and the people inside the organization are different. And the one thing I did, well, there's many things I learned, but just a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting down with another Long Island businessman, a CEO of a very nice company. And I explained what I just said to you. And he said, David, it sounds like you've started to challenge your people more. And I thought to myself, gee, do people like to be challenged? And then he said, good people like to be challenged. And I thought to myself, gee, maybe I've been doing it wrong for the last 30 years. Maybe I haven't challenged people enough. And so that's where we are now. People really enjoy the responsibilities that they have. And you're right, 100%, Rich, in your observations of what happened at Clear Vision. So we intend to keep the management style that way. It's and the systems that we developed during the last year, we intend to keep.
Great. So Kevin, I wrote down 3 C's: communication, culture, connection. Now you've got an organization that has 800 employees, so I could just imagine, moving forward, the things that you're looking to do in your organization to, either maintain or enhance, any one of those 3 C's. So, maybe talk about some of the things that, you're going to be implementing at Dime in order to, provide that strength in either culture, communication, or how you're keeping your employees connected.
I think first off, I loved hearing all the conversations, because in a point in time when you think that you're going to just jump in and be tactical, everyone on this call, we're doing strategic things at the same time, because you've ultimately changed your organization. So, oftentimes we're just dealing with the problem at hand, but each one of you kind of came up with a new strategy to deal, and they'd be long-term things to your organization. And that communication, you're right, is important. So, one of the things I had mentioned is, we do have a remote workforce. At that point in time, I had 40 branches. Now we have 60 branches. We sent 250 people home. How are we going to continue to do this? And we implemented these sort of Zoom town halls. We had not been a Zoom company, so we had to figure out how to do it. And to have 500 people on some of those calls was interesting. When do you do it? Around when customers are in branches or not? And they became not just points of information, they became where we would try to engage our employees in different things. I'm going to tell you, sometimes there were funny meetings, sometimes they were more serious. We used, I would photobomb Zoom calls, right? Because you're trying to have conversations with employees that, especially when we started to put the 2 organizations together, that I couldn't meet. Now, I was much more of a hands-on manager. I wanted everybody in one building that I could walk around and see, step in somebody's office, understand, look for those impromptu conversations. 40 branches, try to get out there and see them, because they are sometimes the remote workforce. If you think about the nature of our business, The people who have the most contact with our customers, quite honestly, are people in branches that don't have a lot of times contacts with the people making the decisions. So you try to bridge that gap. So, all of that is going to be used. I think that one of the complaints has always been, there's been almost, do we have too many forms of communication? I can text you, I can email you, I can send a memo. Now we have Zoom. How do we make sure that they're all fitting the same way? How do we, and sometimes we're still trying to figure that part out. Do I send it all 4 different ways, or do I send it one way? But I think the idea of using this medium to once every 2 weeks talk to every employee so they understand. And from a transparency standpoint, basically letting them all know what's going on. The challenge again for us was in the middle of doing all of this, tactically, we were trying to deal with, we had, 15% of our loan portfolio because of businesses couldn't pay their loans. So we had to deal with putting them on some form of forbearance. We did all of those PPP loans. And your point about relying on your team, David, is incredibly important. You sat here and think you can do everything. And for us to do that first round, we mobilized almost every employee was engaged in that. I had, basically every employee was inputting loans or a loan officer. We were, handing off passwords in the middle of the night so we can continue to do that. And that energy, that enthusiasm, that passion that our employees have for what they do, you have to make sure you maintain that. And so we're going to continue to use all of these mediums. I struggle with where we'll be a fully remote organization, but I probably was the dinosaur that thought everybody needed to come back. And I don't think it'll be that way, but I do think there'll be some form of people in the office. Our delivery channel is still, very, very branch centric. We've obviously come up with other ways for our customers to deal with us, but, they come to us in our branches because there are issues. We make sure that they are staffed and appropriately staffed. So I look forward to the evolution of our organization, but I think it will always have a lot more communication. I think we'll build upon the passion. One of the things that I think was interesting is that I think what I felt is the government was very constructive in helping us get through this problem, this issue. As you said, the accountants, the banks, we were able to figure out ways to create breathing room for organizations, whether we, all the loans that were on forbearance, the PPP program and all the other programs. So you'd like to make sure that you maintain the momentum. Bankers are always on calls like this complaining about regulators. That's always the person that we complain about the most. I would say they were incredibly constructive in this process of helping us and keeping that dialogue going. And so I look forward to building on the momentum that we had and was created, partnerships with the government. If you think about, outdoor dining, who would have ever thought that would have been approved as quickly as it did and close off streets to give restaurants help to the other side? They're in the park, Terry, you put together an organization that basically did sort of, parking lot testing. Imagine saying you were going to do that a year and a half ago and allowing something to happen. Parking lot vaccinations. All of that were partnerships, figuring out ways to solve problems very quickly in partnership. I would love to see that maintained.
So, Kevin, for you personally, I as I'm listening to a lot of the things that you've clearly recognized about your organization, and it sounds like leveraged much of what you were and look for ways to kind of optimize that and being flexible and nimble at the same time. So, and you called yourself a dinosaur, which I can appreciate because I think a lot of us, feel as though we can, as leaders, we can will things. We can will things to be the way that we want them to be, but often that's not the best approach. So, from your own perspective, what are some of the things that you had to do to kind of change your own approach and your own thinking about a leader that speaks to being transformational?
I think, again, we all fall into the trap of thinking we could do it all ourselves, and we can't. And when everybody's remote, I felt like I was losing control of my ability to communicate with people. We had to come up with other ways. I think it's at times recognizing that we can't do it all of ourselves and we have to rely on other people and communicate that down the food chain, if you will, because so many of our employees also feel that way, that they need to rely on other people. We have to be comfortable that it's not always going to be perfect. We were testing stuff as it went along. In times we were communicating with our customers that, okay, we're going to try this. It may not work. Can you have patience with us? That dialogue back and forth. And so, and I think it's also, in even trying to put together the merger that we talked about, all of our employees we don't manage them all the same correctly. Each people have different sort of touch points and the different ways they're motivated, and we have to make sure we touch all of those. But I think I'm more self-aware of what goes on, how I react, and obviously how other people in the organization react. So this is certainly an evolution for me.
So David K, following up a little bit on what we were just talking about with Kevin, from your perspective, as a leader who had also gone through a really challenging time and looked to see what his organization is going to look like moving forward. What are some of the things that you've seen in yourself that maybe would have looked differently a year and a half ago versus today, and how do you see your own transformation as a leader helping your organization move forward?
Sure. It certainly has been an eye opener the last 15 months or so, to really establish a shared leadership model. As the founder of the organization, I never had founder syndrome, right? But because we were always evolving and thinking ahead, thinking 5 or 6 years ahead of what's going to be needed. But certainly being the public figure for the organization, I always felt like a tremendous responsibility that everything was on my shoulders, right? And so, we started to establish when I say a real like implemented shared leadership model, and we're going to continue doing that. Continue doing that in the future. I think, like Kevin, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur as well, even in that now that we started to go back to the office a little bit, I have to really check myself to say that, what's the new normal going to be? Because it just feels, it was almost like we were never gone, right? Except that all the places that we went for lunch seem new now. So, so I think part of that shared leadership model will happen, and how we're moving forward in what our next phase is going to be. And, we're a community center, right? But so what does a community center look like in, 2021, 2022? Should it look like what it was in 2019? And I don't think so, but I know that that whatever the next phase is going to be, and we don't know what it is, and that sometimes could be a little bit scary, right? Because we want all the answers right now, is going to be part of a shared decision model. And that's what we're starting to meet and talk about what those next phases are going to be.
Maybe a little follow-up on that, David, is when I think about the way you opened, and you saw a need and you took the risk to own and found an organization to satisfy need. And to me, there's probably not a stronger attribute of a leader than to be somebody who is willing to do that. So as we're moving ourselves forward, do you consider yourself somebody who, is not going to sit around and kind of wait for guidance from others, but you're going to assess your situation, gain whatever consensus you believe you need to gain, make decisions, and then move things forward?
Absolutely. That's the way that we've always operated. I think, particularly as an LGBT organization on Long Island, it's very different from being in Manhattan, right? Or in a big city. And we know as our organization who our constituency is, who we're accountable to, which is everyone, in Nassau and Suffolk counties. And that, we're not going to sit around and wait around for someone to say that this is what should be done. We're going to actually go get that information ourselves by talking to people, by including people. One of the things that we did last year, we did a community needs assessment. And we had hundreds of people that that responded about what their needs were, what they were looking for, and then we had to meet to see how we could adapt them, how we could meet them, and that's the process that's going to continue. Is really, being out in our community, and our community is Long Island, to hear from people about what is needed, and then we're going to make decisions based upon that, based upon the needs of what's happening currently and also in the future. And the same thing for our staff, is that, listen, we're in the business of human services and serving people. But sometimes, as I said before, we can get so caught up in the mishigas of everything that happens, of every single day, that we forget that our staff are people too, in a way, and that they need to be just as involved as we involve the community. So that's been a change within our organization. And quite frankly, I think, as David F. said, is that this stoppage of having to go into the office really gave us time to rethink of how we operate. And so really it's been able to bring so many voices in, which has led to better decisions that we're making currently and for the future.
Thanks, David. Paul, well-respected leader, visible leader on Long Island. What are some of the things that you had seen in yourself in how you approach leadership as you move through the pandemic, and other things that, might have transformed your own perspective about, how you go about leading your organization?
Well, I guess a little similar to what David just mentioned about shared leadership. That is my philosophy. That's how I oversee Long Island Cares. I share responsibility with 6 other people who are the directors of the various program components of the organization. One of the things we did very early on, like March 13th, was designate some more leaders, that we needed other people within the organization who were willing to do the job 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because that's what the response had to include. We were not able to close down or send people home. Certain people can work remotely, but 63 out of 64 staff continued to come here every single day and continue to do so, despite some people being tested positively for COVID. So people just knew what the job entailed and what they signed on for. My role in working with our administrative team is to provide them with all the support they need to do their job, whether it's supplies, whether it's salary, whether it's, technology. Just tell me what you need to do your job so that we can, do it, and that everyone is working together. That was something that I knew I had to do. For us, the one big surprise that we had was going to be the increase in fundraising, and some of it based upon work that we had done, and some of it because people were familiar with what we were doing. People seemed to respond to the material that we sent out about the unduplicated number. It's one thing for me to say we served, 200,000 people. It's another thing for me to say we served 200,000 people, and I can tell you where all of them live and why they came here. So we knew how many people were coming to us because of unemployment. We knew how many people were, sick with COVID because their families were coming to pick up food because the breadwinner had COVID and couldn't go to work for 2 weeks. So there was a lot that, we had to implement. Certainly, as we move forward, we're adjusting our focus again. I think in some ways, Long Island Cares has done all it could have done to address the issue of hunger and how you help people who are hungry. And for us, as we transition into another area, a lot of our work moving forward is going to be on the root causes of hunger. why Harry founded this organization. So whether it's unemployment or illness or racism or cultural discrimination or homelessness, there are causes why people are hungry. And we've got to address those causes. We're going to address them, in the community. We'll address them politically. And we're going to be leaning on a lot of our partners, because I think when we speak stronger together with a consolidated voice where we're all, doing this, making the same argument. So we're going to be looking at avenues like that as we move forward. And we're excited.
That sounds great. So as somebody who is clearly recognized, your own ability to influence, but, you can create a greater voice if you get, more connected to other organizations that can really infill some of the bigger societal issues that we're looking to overcome. Do you get a sense today that, there's going to be nice alignment between leaders such as yourself in order to get together and develop strategies in order to, maybe make even, greater positive impacts?
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of interest in the nonprofit field of people working closely together. We're hearing a lot lately in the for-profit sector about things like political action and corporate social responsibility. Well, nonprofits are corporations too, and we ought to be doing more of that work. We ought to be out there in public. We ought to be out there at the demonstrations. We ought to be supporting people that support us. And I think we haven't done that in a collaborative effort. I think many of us have done this work on our own on behalf of our organization. David Kay is a great example of that. He is the face of the LGBT community on Long Island. His is a voice that needs to be listened to. But in the same respect, David Kay deserves to have his colleagues standing beside him and lifting him up, as opposed to, hey, saw you on television. It's nice that you saw me, but where were you when I was on television? So those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at.
I think that sounds great. And to me, as somebody and my organization who supports in different ways, you always talk about the fantastic nonprofits that exist on Long Island. And I think both of you made reference to the fact that we are a fairly philanthropic community, and we are looking to make change and support, ways to make positive change. And, I always felt as though, the more connected our nonprofits can be are only going to strengthen our community and allow us to make changes. So that sounds awesome, Paul. I appreciate that. David, the David F. I forgot to put the F on David for that one. David F. So from your own perspective, from an attribute point of view, what are some of the things that you believe make an effective leader, a leader who can transform, can take their organization in a new and potentially better direction?
Yeah, I think that's maybe two questions in one, which is one related to COVID, which is the underlying part of our discussion, and then the second part about leadership generally. So why don't I just to break it down that way, to talk about it that way. One of the things that changed for us in COVID was, as I said, we took apart the business 100%. And when we put it back together, we had a non-traditional hierarchy, or rather, I should say, a non-hierarchical set of business units. Each unit was designed to tackle a particular part of the business. So it may be that revenue was a particular challenge, and we put people in those different buckets, even if they previously had not been in sales. So one of the things we did was change the structure of the company. As far as individuals like myself, what I think changed there was, as much as I said I encouraged others, or rather, I shouldn't say it that way. The others encouraged me, David, let me do the work, right? We talked about that. Let me do the work. as much as that happened, I think I became more directive in some ways. So, one part of leadership that I think is important is that you have to be directive. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have strong leadership qualities, the organization will lack pace, it will lack vision, it will lack the communication that's necessary. The leader that can create a sense of urgency, even daily, without making people tired. The leader that can encourage teamwork without, at the same time maintaining some semblance of individualism. The leader that can encourage curiosity in the organization. The leader that can have people raise their hand and say yes, rather than let me see who else is going to do it. That kind of leader is very, very effective in all organizations. And so what I learned certain things. And the second part of that lunch I told you I had with another CEO on Long Island. And when I told him what was going on, he said, David, it sounds like you've become the CEO of your organization. So, when we see the war movies of Eisenhower sitting in a tent somewhere and everyone running up to him and saying, here's the news, you see Eisenhower actually going, that's good news. What are you going to do about it, Paul? I've got a lot of other things going on in my world. What are you going to do about it, Paul? So I think that was also something that changed in me. Instead of me wanting to provide all the answers to everyone, I think I asked people, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Leadership. The other thing that probably was important in the last year that I learned is that different leadership styles are acceptable under different situations. And so, for example, we have to work very quickly in COVID. All of us did. So in some ways, there was a little bit more authoritarianism inside of Clear Vision Optical, which wouldn't have happened before. So that type of leadership that was needed for the moments where decisions had to be made quickly and decisively, that's something that I was probably not as comfortable with as an individual. I think my natural style was a little bit more collaborative, a little bit more slow. Let's not ruffle too many feathers, etc. And once we realized we don't have as much time to get things done, because again, the organization was effectively out of business. When you're bringing only in 10% revenue on a monthly basis, and your expenses are virtually the same, you get your attention is get knocked inside the head, and that's really what happened to us. That kind of leadership was a very, very different trait for us. Now, if I go back to where we are today, I do feel that inside the organization, the last year, we also developed other leaders. They were reluctant, perhaps at first, but I can see that the entire organization is focused behind certain individuals, and those individuals did a great job of stepping up. There's a book that many of you probably have read by Dale Carnegie, The Leader in You. It's a really great book if you haven't read it. Of course, written a long time ago by one of the great business management leaders. But he talks about leadership in every person. I think that's also what happened inside of Clear Vision. There are a lot of people, not only at the management level, but at the staff level, that really grew up to be leaders in the last year. And that was a very exciting part for our company. So our company today is smaller. I think David Kay mentioned furloughs. We had furloughs, and in some instances, not everybody came back. We did a good job of helping people find other opportunities or helping them, if they were ready to retire. But we have a smaller staff today. And that said, our staffing we have the same output that we had in 2019 with a smaller staff because of the way everybody works inside the organization. So again, leadership for the moment, and then, leadership changes within the individual, and then leadership for, every individual inside the organization. I think those are the things that were very evident and we won't change going forward. We'll enhance and evolve. That's the other word that somebody used. The organization is very fast evolving, and it's a lot of fun to be in an organization like that.
Great, David. So we have about 10 minutes or so left, and I think the conversation today was great, and the diversity in perspectives is fantastic. And you know, kind of the way I started, we all have our unique challenges with our organization, but a lot of our challenges are similar as leaders. So I'm going to ask, you know, each of our panelists, you know, just to take a couple of minutes and, you know, close with, you know, a message to deliver to, you know, those leaders on Long Island about maybe yourself, the things that you're looking for in yourself as a leader. It could be a little bit about, you know, vision that you might have. And, you know, this way, you know, those that are continuing to struggle, because there are, you know, organizations and businesses that are still continuing to struggle. I think some were able to navigate the pandemic better than others. Some got stronger support than others. So I think keeping the perspective of, you know, not all of us as leaders have come through maybe better than you know, some others that are struggling. So I want you to have a sense to, you know, those leaders that are maybe still struggling a bit, you know, what guidance and perspective could you possibly offer them? So I'm going to start with Kevin on that.
You know, it's as we all got our questions for this, you're prepared, and then I think about now this sort of dialogue that we have here, and some of what I thought, I don't know, I still think. I will be honest with you. As you go through this exercise, you recognize that how much we have changed, how much, I'll just say, in our organization, our employees now feel that they're part of something bigger, right? You know, we were part of B&B, now Dime, but I think everyone that's gotten through this feels they're part of this bigger community. And I think the not-for-profits, you know, you guys should be able to leverage, because I think people want to give back. They want to feel like they can make a difference. It started basically as your company survives. Now, how do you basically give back to the community that supports it? How do we maintain the changes that we've all gone through personally? I think the idea of, you know, obviously, you know, companies need leaders, right? That there has to be somebody somewhat in charge to set the direction, to have the people follow. But how do they extract that leadership out of the rest of their organization, David F., as you've described, right? They're all there. And how do you make sure you maintain that? Oftentimes, as we go through crises, all of a sudden we forget 6 months that we were through it, and we go back to some old habits, and we can't do that. So, you know, I look at our organization, you know, we're sort of poised, we're different than when we went into it, just because of what's happened, and also the change through the merger. I want to make sure that we remain focused on why we did this. We remain focused on the successes we had that got us through it, that we don't forget how we got here, how our employees basically can continue to maintain that sort of ownership and that sort of shared vision that we all had to get to the other side. So I think it is, I guess, for the organizations maybe that are still struggling, it's making sure that you're having that level of communication, that you understand what your business is going forward. You know, I think everybody's business changed. David, I guess, in some ways, David F., and the idea that you're same revenue, less employees, say, okay, what was I doing wrong before? Now I know I can do it. How do I not get back there? And I know we all find the same way. And so, you know, I know the same thing in my organization. So it's a matter of continuing to sort of, you know, self-assess who you are, continuing that dialogue with our employees. Again, we all get into these very good habits when we're in the time of battle. And then we get back, and when we all calm down, that we don't forget those, and we lose sight of what got us through there, and make sure that our organization, if it's evolved, stays that way.
That's some great insight, Kevin. Really good insight. Thanks. David K.
Sure. And that last point that Kevin made, I think, is real important, you know, because I find myself now back at the office, automatically going back, thinking at least, but knowing that, you know, thinking pre-pandemic, you know, we're back in the office, et cetera. But I you know, I mean, there's a ton of challenges. There always are challenges, right? And these are different ones. You know, and I think kind of approaching the challenges as opportunities, I think is probably a good way to approach this. So for, you know, for the organization that I head, you know, what are the opportunities ahead to help people more, to make it more accessible, to still, you know, meet our mission and and do so by, staying true to our values and who we are. And so that's going to be a process, and realizing that we need to figure this out together as a team. And so I think the challenges, if we take a look at them as opportunities to be better, and not to return to the way it was before. Doesn't mean everything before was bad, because it wasn't. But I think we've learned that. I think what I've learned, I should say, is that we need to, we run ragged in the not-for-profit industry, right? Because we do so much on so little, and on shoestring budgets, and the reason why people go into the not-for-profit industry is not to become rich, but to help people, right? And because they have a strong passion for doing what they do. And I think as leaders of these organizations, we have to have the same passion for our staff and how we can make, their lives easier. And so, so I'm looking forward to that as an opportunity to transform how we work, not necessarily what we do, but how we work. And because we're going to continue doing what we're supposed to be doing, and always being innovative and out on the forefront of doing that. And one of the biggest things I learned about myself is that to take care of myself. I am a social worker, but I am the worst social worker when it comes to talking about self-care. And anytime someone talked about self-care, quite honestly, I'm like, all right, that's a bunch of BS, right? It's like, we have stuff to do, and but it's not, and I learned as I was able to have a different kind of lifestyle. One in which I was able to take better care of myself. I became a better leader as well, and with a clearer head. And so, I'm starting to plan what, through the shared leadership model and other stuff, and in how I'm going to operate going forward. And I think, at one point, just to really don't share this, but 2019 was a horrible year personally for me. We lost both of our dogs, who were like our children, and then we lost my mom at the end of the year. So we suffered a lot of loss in 2019 personally, and then just went right into 2020, with a lot more loss. And so to be able to kind of have that self-care perspective, and think about how we're going to take care of ourselves while still taking care of our staff and taking care of our community, I think is an important thing to make sure that I continue to do as a leader, that I after 27 years of running this organization, I didn't do for the first 27 years in the way that I did it last year, and it certainly has made me a better leader.
Wow, that's great stuff. You just made a mention to staying true and committed to your principles and your values, and I think for all organizations, when the waters are rough, if you can stick to your values and stick to your principles, I think that's a great way to guide us forward. Paul, your thoughts?
I think for me, a lot has been learned from stewardship of your donors, and which cultivate, more support, new support. I was just really overwhelmed by the generosity, not just the corporate sector, the foundation area, and individuals. They allowed us to do what we needed to do. And at the same time, as we move forward, it's time to apply those same principles of stewardship to our staff, to make sure we have the right staff working at Long Island Cares, to make sure they have all the tools they need to do their job, and to make sure that they're compensated better than fairly. And, during the first 14 months of COVID, we did provide staff bonuses to recognize the fact that our staff was working under tremendous odds. When testing began, there was no discussion of testing food bank workers, but we were the ones that were going into the wooded areas and giving food to the homeless and visiting people at home who were susceptible to COVID and other illnesses. So it's important for us to apply the same stewardship and recognition of our donors to our staff. and also to the agencies. There are 374 organizations that rely upon Long Island Cares to receive 46% of the food they give to their communities. We've got to be doing more with them, including giving them additional opportunities for grant funding. If we don't share the good experiences that we had during COVID with the people who work here or the people that we support, we wouldn't have done the job very well. So I'm looking forward to incorporating those things into the way we move forward.
Sounds great, Paul, and thanks for all your efforts and continued moving forward. David F.
So Rich, this is like the part where on the Fareed Zakaria show, they say, we're sorry, we're running out of time. We have to go now. Sorry, we can't get to you there. But well, here on HIA, we can go the extra minute. Couple of two things. One, David Cade talked about taking care of himself. I think I always did take care of myself physically and emotionally. And I think that's something that happened to me from a long time ago from a different world. But one thing that I believe a lot of CEOs do, and I was one of them, they not only pride themselves on working hard, but they also pride themselves on toughing it out and working well under stress and being stressed out, and they can handle it. And what I learned was for myself, and I won't change it, is I actually operate a lot better when there's a little bit less stress on me. And I didn't realize that before. So by having my staff help me more and allowing me more free time during the day, I actually can be a better thinker. And that's the big benefit for me. I also learned that, people want to help. And I think in the past, by me not allowing others to fully, it's one thing to say, oh, you can sit in the back of the boat and paddle with your hands. It's another thing to say, here, you get to steer the boat. That's quite a different world. And I think for us, there's a lot more people doing things that are a lot more important in the organization. I won't go back. The other item that, Kevin said about, not wanting to go back, we won't go back. And I think that's one of the big things that I, as a CEO, took away from this. We like where we are right now. We got there in a very bizarre way. It wasn't purposeful, as I mentioned, and there was some pain involved in getting there. But we all like where we are. So right now, the way we run our business is habitual. There's a couple of things I'd point out to some CEOs. Number one, always know where your river of cash is. How are you going to make your money in the future? So for Clear Vision, we have a 5-year plan to evolve at least 25% of our business outside of what we normally do right now. So we will have different revenue stream, and we're about 4% of the way there right now. Number two, with people, groom them, challenge them, and recognize them. We all know to do that, but I think COVID taught me a better way to do it. Ask for help. The government, to be fair, we all criticize our government. Government did a good job. Local government, federal government did a good job for us. Our customers will give us help. Our vendors will give us help. Our community will give us help. So ask for help, I think, is very, very important for the CEO. Another lesson I learned, and Kevin, you're right, why were we doing it wrong all those years? And we understood that profit comes first. It's not actually what's left over after revenue and expenses. It's not what's left over. You should say to yourself, what kind of profit do I want? Then let me manage my revenue and let me manage my expenses properly. If my dad was alive now, he'd say, David, you finally learned it. And the last thing I would say is we always had an innovative organization, and I think we're known for that. But at this point, we took apart the entire company, and we continue to do that now. We're working on what we call our 2021 initiatives, and we have a plan on October 1st to start 2022 initiatives, which the entire company is involved in. So take apart your business consistently gets you the innovation that you want, not just thinking that you're innovative because you did one or two things. Take apart your company.
Great, thanks, David. And great job by the panel. Thanks for giving us time this morning. I see Anthony's back in. So Anthony, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, so I want to thank all the attendees that had the fortune of hearing these executives talk about how they've gone through COVID. Each one is a case study. So I will say I am personally proud of everyone on this call, from both Davids to Paul, to Kevin, and to you, Richard, with H2M. all have been leaders through everything. So I want to thank the panel. This has been a wonderful program, and I want to thank all the attendees.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Rich.